Okay, everybody, this is Wintermute, and oh yeah, Jinx is here too. Say hi, Jinx.
Hi.
Okay, anyway,
I did say
uh,
hi. I don't know.
okay, so this week we're going to talk about it's going to be a hot button issue for some people. Uh, it is for me, and that is playing by the spirit of the rules versus the rules as written. Okay, now, Jinx, let me ask you: when I first say that term, actually, when I first proposed this idea, what was your what kind of what what popped into your mind about this particular issue?
Well, I don't know too much about it. Like,
I
the
do
more
know
complex game you. Sorry.
conceptually you
Yeah.
get it, though
Oh,
you may
yeah.
not have
Yeah.
ever formalized it
Yeah.
quite like I'm about
No,
to.
that's right. Yeah. I think the more complex game you have, the more variety you have, the more options there are for screw ups or confusion in the rules where certain things don't gel absolutely completely. You end up having certain things that are overpowered in some ways, and some things that just completely miss out, and some things that become completely useless the more you add into the game. And so that causes some difficulty. From the rule designer perspective, you can't cover all scenarios. And so what pops into my head when you say rules as written versus spirit of the rules, people often say, spirit of the rules is if the rules don't seem to match up, we give you the permission to kind of modify things to some degree to perpetuate the spirit of the rules. If you see something's overly broken because we can't cover all our bases, all the alternative scenarios that come up in a game, we give you kind of permission to tweak it and adjust it to maintain the spirit of the rules. So that's spirit of the rules. The rules as written is a very hardcore draconian kind of this is what it says. We don't care if it's broken. If you want to play our game, you have to play it the way it is written. And that's what I got from that when you mentioned it.
Let me give you a kind of
Sure.
alternate view of it.
Yeah.
Rules as written means even though the rule doesn't quite make sense, you accept that the designer, you give them the benefit of the doubt. You say, you knew what you were doing when you worded it this way. You worded it this way for a very specific reason. So we're going to stick with that for the most part to make sure that the game stays true to its balance and to its design concepts and principles.
Mm-hmm.
Spirit of the rules is this doesn't make sense, even though the rules clearly do articulate how this is supposed to work. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't really make sense. So we're just going to kind of ignore it and go with the spirit of the rules. And to me, that's more of a breakdown of the game itself into
Mm-hmm.
something else than how it
Mm-hmm.
was designed.
Mm-hmm.
And I do and I understand different people can have different, like you said, you gave kind of a very different, you look at rules as written as being draconian. I look at it as being making sure that everybody has the same understanding
Mm-hmm.
and everybody's playing from the same. We're all at the same starting line,
Right. Right.
rather than the confusion where somebody's over here waiting to
Absolutely.
play
Yeah.
this game and somebody's up here waiting to start the game, and we're all kind of like all over
Mm-hmm.
the place. No,
That's
we're all
right.
at
Yeah.
the same baseline and we're all kind of moving forward together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the big thing and let me just make a quick note here. A lot of people who watch these have heard me bitch endlessly about Games Workshop. Okay, this is going to be the worst one yet. Okay, because this particular topic has been a thorn in my side. It is stuck in my craw for literally well over a decade because I play Warhammer 40K, and I
Yeah.
dealt with Games Workshop and all of their BS about spirit of the rules versus rules as written.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot. So yeah, I am bringing real experience and real frustration
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
real, I'm not just, this isn't a concept. This isn't just we're not just discussing a what if scenario. No, no, no. I've gone through all this. Um, so
So
let,
you're approaching it emotionally and biasedly. Gotcha.
geez, you make me sound like a dick now.
Just kidding.
But no, yeah, but no, yeah, yeah. But you know what? That's fine. That's it. It's okay to say, hey, when I'm not
No,
a
it's
little
all
bit.
good. It's all good.
Um, So okay, let me maybe I should start there. Let me start there. Let me start with my experiences in with Warhammer 40,000. Okay. Now Warhammer 40,000 at its core is it's a miniature tabletop game.
Mm-hmm.
I got into it in second edition when it was still very much a beer and pretzels game, as far as the designers were concerned.
Right.
And for the guys that designed this, when it started out as Rogue Trader, which is actually more of a role playing game originally, it started out as Rogue Trader, and then it kind of evolved into a miniatures war game.
Okay. Yeah.
The designers always said to us, it was just a bunch of guys getting together, having fun, creating kind of narrative driven combat sequences to move our guys around and shoot at each other. That is fine. I respect that. I understand where that's coming from. There started to become problems when they started to get big as a company and the game started to spread out and people wanted to play it. And it started to get big over here. And I think it really started to get big over here in third edition. And when third edition came out, it attracted a lot more players, and third edition was a much better edition rules wise. And I'll be the first one to say that rules wise, it was a much better edition than second edition. There was a real disconnect between the ideology between how the game should be played between the UK crowd and the European crowd as a whole, and the United States crowd. Okay, and there is a lot of personality differences between these two regions. One in particular was, the British who designed the game company comes from the UK. So the designers, to them, it has a rich, great backstory, and I love the backstory of 40K. And to them, what you should do is you should look at the different factions, you should buy that codex, and you should read all the background story behind that army, and you should kind of go, I envision which type of craft world I like to play if I'm going to play the Eldar or the Eldari now as they're called, or which Space Marine chapter you want to play. And then you build your army around that concept. Okay, that's not a terrible way to look at it.
Sure.
But the problem is when it came over here to the United States, a lot of the US players went, well, generally speaking, US players tend to be more competitive. And so the first thing they would do is they'd go past all that fluff and all that background, and they'd look, what can this army do? What cool stuff can they bring to the table? Because I'm here to play the game. I want a decent shot at winning the game.
Right.
And I want to know what this army can bring to the fight.
Yeah.
And the UK players got pissed off at this, and the designers got pissed off at this. This is a well-known thing that they badmouth. That it's dated that they said the game was great until it got to America, until it got to the US, and they ruined it. And I'm going to say at this point, they're wrong.
Okay, yeah.
Games Workshop is wrong at this point. The designers are wrong because they're going into it with the wrong mentality. That mentality of you can create your army any way you want because that's how you want it. Only works if the rules are very well balanced, very well toned, very well tweaked and dialed in to give every option a viable chance of winning. Okay. And that's very hard to do in a game.
Very hard. Yeah.
But because that was never the case with the rules, and certain play styles always trounced other play styles. As soon as it got to the US, all of that was laid bare. Because the US players would read the fluff after they decided this army was worth investing in. And they would get, and I played US players who absolutely got into the character of their armies. They would dress up for tournaments and stuff. And, beautifully themed armies. And I mean, people who love the game, but the rules always fell short because it was because they never cared to even balance the different factions. And part of the problem was the game designers still felt that this was just a beer and pretzels type of game. It's about the experience. Again, I'm not knocking that. And let me deviate just a little bit here. The best way to play Warhammer 40,000, in my opinion, is in a narrative campaign with your friends. That's the best way to play. Okay, fuck tournaments. I think tournament play was the worst thing to happen to Warhammer 40,000. Really do.
Okay.
However, that does not get them off the hook of expectations of making clear, concise rules that make sense, that everybody gives everybody a relatively equal chance of winning. So this is a great example of the game designer telling the players, you're doing it wrong. How can we be doing it wrong if we're simply playing by the rules that you wrote? Why are you calling us bad players because we're playing by the rules you wrote? The rules should be what defines the style and the feel of the game more than anything else. In my opinion. And I'll give you a very real example where I kept running into this. And this goes into another problem with rules as written versus spirit of the rules. And let me just put what that problem is. It's how can I know what game we're playing when you have a different concept of what the spirit of the rules is and the spirit of the game is than I do? Okay, when I played the Eldar, I guess I need to legally call them Eldari now, whatever. I played Minecraft World, Sun Ghoul, okay, homebrew.
Sure.
I realized that there was that the packaging for the Warwalkers came with a Bright Lance and a Scatter Laser. Okay, one was a lot of weaker shots. One was a tank killer.
Okay. Yeah.
And there was it came with one on each side, so it had those two. It was a versatile design. However, I realized that, and the rules allowed this, it was better to swap out the laser for the Bright Lance for the Scatter Laser and just absolutely go after infantry units with that. Pick out infantry units and just wipe them off the board as best I could.
Right.
Okay. Now, a lot of players went, dude, that's badass. Other players went, wow, that is some cheesy bullshit. But it was all irrelevant either way because it's in the rules that I could do it.
Right.
So I did it.
Yeah.
So you get players who would show up and look at that and go, "That's complete cheesy. That's you're breaking the game." I'm like, the rules allow it. If it was breaking the game, the rules shouldn't allow it. It's an effective way to play. And I realized it was better to specialize. And then I would take that Bright Lance and I'd put two Bright Lances on the other Warwalker, and they would just go after tanks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And it was a much more effective way of using my firepower and specializing my units in a way. So it was an effective tactic that most players, I think most players actually respected it. But I always got accused of cheesing it out but then there are gamers where you play against their army. We'll just use Chaos as an example because they have problems or have traditionally have problems. I'm not up on the new edition. Oh my God, that configuration of your Eldar is just so cheesy. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I beat you this game, and I did. Yeah. Now he comes back the next game and he trounces me with his Chaos, and it's like, well, man, those Thousand Suns, man, those are a real big slice of Gouda on top of that, burger. And you go, oh no, they're perfectly reasonable.
Right. Yeah.
They're perfectly reasonable. I'm like, okay, well, why are they perfectly reasonable, but my Scatter Laser play isn't?
Right. Yeah.
So it all boils down. Everything you do is wrong. Everything he does is fantastic.
Right.
And this is another problem where people, and he's somebody who usually wants to play in the spirit of the rules rather than by rules as written, because he can always tweak that situation to benefit him.
Right. The spirit is subjective. The spirit is very subjective in this case. Yeah. Absolutely.
Exactly.
So I'm gonna draw two parallels if I can here, if that's cool, and then we can jump right in. So
I don't want to hog all the
No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. So this has a little bit to do, but not loads and loads. So whenever I played Axis and Allies, Global 4D, or if I played not so much Global War 36, because, anyways, Axis and Allies, Global 4D, I would tend to win. I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I tend to win. I don't know what it was. I just tended to win, right? I think because I used alternative strategies and this kind of stuff. But whenever I would win, my opponents would say, I just got diced. And that would always irritate me. It was always irritate me because whenever they win, it's by, strategic brilliance. But whenever I won, it was because they got diced, right? So it's just subjective in that sense of that the same subjectivity that people can apply also to, say, Warhammer, where it's the spirit of the rules kind of thing, where on the one side, it's one way, and on the other, it's another way. Now, because we are a channel that dedicated a chunk of what we do to Global War 36, I want to drop in some strategies here, too, that people can think about, right? Say if you invade Russia with nothing but cavalry, and it's completely doable, You know, it's like a reverse Mongol invasion. You completely do it. Some people say, well, that's totally cheesy. But some people would say, well, that's not in with the spirit of the game. You shouldn't be doing that kind of stuff. But you're following the rules of the game. So what do you do then, right? You know, what's the solution in this regards? And so there's this softness to gameplay where you're not exactly sure what you should do. Anyways, going back to your story.
Oh, I'm exactly sure what you should do. And I mean, you've heard me say this before.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm going to use the chess analogy again.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you have a brand new player at chess playing against a well-known, awesome chess player. Okay, and I have played against the guy who could talk about, oh, that's the Kasparov opening, and I'd go, what? Who's Kasparov?
Yeah, okay.
Or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
He was that good.
Right.
But here's the thing: when we sit down and we watch two people play chess, and an experienced chess player beats the newbie in 10 moves or less or whatever, who really sits there and looks at that experienced chess player and goes, dude, you're a dick for beating that guy that quick?
Right. Yeah.
No, nobody does that. And if you do, you're wrong. Okay? Here's why you're wrong. Okay, if that experienced chess player deliberately played with one arm behind his back, not only is he insulting the other player, that he doesn't deserve to give him his full effort. Okay, but that other player will, one, not get any better at the game, or not get better at the game as fast as he should, and two, will go into this game with a skewed sense of what the game is really like. Okay, and this happens in 40K a lot, again, where it's better to have a brand new player sit down after they spent $500, $600, whatever, on a brand new army, put on the table, and get wiped. I mean, every single unit wiped off the table by a chaos player.
Yeah, right.
And yeah, I'm picking on chaos again. You wiped off the table by a chaos player, and then go, I don't think I like this game. That's better than stringing him along and playing deliberately underneath your potential and underneath your army's potential, giving him a false sense of how this game works, sucking him deeper and deeper until he's now $1,000 into this army, and then he goes to his first tournament and he gets slaughtered.
Yeah, I see.
He walks away going, "Oh my God, I had no idea it was really like this."
Yeah.
It's better to just bear it all. Bear it all. This is the reality, and quite frankly, the guy who strung him along should feel bad about that. Okay? Because it's not as the players, it's not our responsibility to balance your rule system.
No, I see your point.
I'm pointing at every single game designer out there who thinks that their system is beyond reproach.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's no, you're playing it wrong. No, you wrote the rules. You wrote the rules. You designed it. Okay. Now it's okay to make mistakes. And I'll tell you right now, as the person who's made probably more mistakes in my career than I can recall when it comes to just report writing alone, let alone rules design, I am so glad that my superiors always said, dude, this report, okay, I didn't slip my wrists and accidentally bleed on this paper. Okay, that's actual ink, I promise you. Now, go fix it. I am so glad they did that.
Yeah.
Because I needed to get better at what I was doing. Okay,
Sure.
Not just because I should be better and be trying to get better at what I'm doing, but because that report, in this instance, that report will get submitted into court.
Yeah,
and if my original report gets in front of the defense attorney and goes, wow, we're going to rip this guy a new one because he can barely write a sentence.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what? And that was and I spent more time working on my reports, and I got, later on in my career, I got lots of compliments. And you know how often I went to court later on in my career? Very rarely. Want to know why? Because the prosecutor would tell me, you write awesome reports. And I don't need to call you to court, because the prosecutor reads your report and goes, oh man, if this guy is half as articulate on the stand as he is with his reports, yeah, you're going to take whatever plea deal they give you, and we're going to be happy with it, because this isn't worth the fight. We're not going to win this. Okay.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So that's part of the reason, that's where I'm coming from when I
Mm-hmm.
talk about rules and being clear and being concise. Okay. I
Mm-hmm.
have made those mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so I take that experience in writing reports and I port them over to kind of writing rules in general.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of a lot of the core principles transfer. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I have sat down and written rules that and then I play it through on my stone the first time and I go, wow,
Yeah.
no, no. That paper gets covered in red. It looks like I had a bloody nose.
Right.
Because it's just okay. No, I need to go back to the drawing board because it didn't hold up in execution. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
there's nothing wrong with that. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing wrong with that. That's what you should be doing. It You should be getting it out there to play test. And this goes back to our last video about posting your rules online. Let the community see them beforehand so that they can rip it apart. So that when you
Yeah.
release the final product, you don't end up with egg on your face because things didn't make much sense.
Mm-hmm.
This is a good thing. Okay. Now, will everything still be perfect in the end? No, it won't. That's not, it's not always possible. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. There's a lot of game companies that realize they put out a mistake in the rule book
Sure.
or in
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
have to put out an errata or they have to put
That's
out a
right. Yeah.
rules clarification or even just a suggestion. But hey guys, we know that this faction's ability, we didn't really define how they work together. It didn't come up in play testing. That's on
Mm-hmm.
us. We're going to suggest tweaking the core rules this way to make it work so that everybody knows what's going on and can move forward and continue to enjoy the game.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
on us because we're the ones who wrote the rules.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. And game companies do this. They do this. There's nothing wrong with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, back to the chess thing. It's important to give players an understanding of what the game is. And so in that same way, let's go back to the chess analogy of this. Do we bully and beat up that excellent world-class player for beating the newbie in 10 moves or less? No, because the expectation is it's the newbie's responsibility to get better at that rules and get better at learning chess. You're
Yeah.
not supposed to hold his hand and say, well, it's okay to say better luck next time. And next time, maybe you want to do this and go ahead and maybe read this book on chess and watch what your opponent does when he makes his moves and come back better and stronger. But
Mm-hmm.
chess is a rule set that everybody in the universe knows.
Yeah.
Okay, everybody knows how to play chess. It's not difficult. Everybody knows it. Now there's some advanced concepts and advanced moves like castling and things like
Sure.
that.
Sure. Yeah.
Not your average player may not be aware of. But still, anybody can go find that out. Okay. And anybody who comes to play chess at a tournament should know how to play chess. And everybody there basically knows how to play chess. Now there may be tournament specific situations that they put out there. So that's different. Every tournament can do that. We're not going to play with this expansion. We're going to play with this expansion at this tournament. Okay, great. You know what to expect going in.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings me to my next point. Okay, if there's a lot of ambiguity in your rules and your attitude is well, the players can figure it out. Well, here's a problem that comes up. You have Group A over here that interprets a rule this way, and then Group B that interprets a rule this way.
Yeah.
We're not talking about expansions or house rules. We're talking about core rules, the rule book. And then you've got Group C, which interprets that rule a completely different way.
Mm-hmm.
Now what happens when these three groups merge together and start trying to play the game?
That's right. Yeah.
Who's right?
Yeah.
And if you as a game designer are saying, well, you guys figure it out amongst yourself, what message is that saying? You don't care enough to actually define your own rules. Are these rules or are they guidelines?
Mm-hmm.
Which is it? Thane, which is it? See, he gets it.
He gets
I didn't coach him on that either. So are we playing by rules or are we playing by guidelines? Okay, because if you're not willing to commit and say, no, this is how it's supposed to work, this is for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And it's perfectly okay to say this is how it worked for this reason to begin with, but player feedback and more play testing is that, well, we've had to change it to this. That's perfectly okay. That's why we have additions. That's why we have addendums and supplemental books that will come out. And you can just post, hey guys, change it. Just change it. Just change the way you play. This will make a better game for you. That's perfectly okay. But you now have disparate groups that cannot relate to each other and cannot play the same game with each other because they not house rules, but because you have three different interpretations and possibly more of how the core rules are supposed to work. That's the core rules, and everything should be built off that. That's not fair to the players. That's not fair.
But what do you do then, right? Like it's complex, because if you have a fairly complex game with X amount of variables on it, like you release it to the public, and until it's released to the public, it won't be play tested sufficiently, right? So what's the solution then? You release it to the public and people come to you with questions, and then you have to kind of perhaps it's on a spectrum where you have to say, okay, try to do what you think is best, and then kind of watch whatever the community comes up with, and then adjust your own rules based upon what they do, right?
Oh yeah,
So
and again,
maybe when they say spirit of the rules, they say like, come up with your best solution. We'll watch you, and in our next edition, we'll do that. Like maybe that's what they're saying.
And that's okay, and it's okay to say, but you should say that as a game company.
I suppose so. Yeah.
You should say that as a game company. But if you're like Games Workshop, if your first reaction is you're doing it wrong, as a player, at this point, I will drop that game. I will walk away and play something else.
Yeah.
Tell you what, I'll look back at you in a couple of editions, and we'll see if you've improved your attitude. Because that attitude is not sustainable.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Not sustainable for a game. And Games Workshop it's on a constant roller coaster because they are losing players and players are coming in, and because players are getting burnt out by this attitude of it. And it is an attitude that they have.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And players are getting burned about it. And like I said, Discourse Miniatures sums this up. Her channel sums it up beautifully with her videos about all the problems of Games Workshop and why you get so many, such a regular exodus and a regular influx of players. And Games Workshop, as far as they're concerned, they're perfect. They do nothing wrong.
And I guess in some sense it doesn't hurt them because everybody's already bought their product and they're moving, like they're not going to add as much money. A new customer will bring in money, but the old customers, they won't.
Yeah, there's a whole, and she actually, on Discourse Miniature, she actually talks about financial reports and stuff, and how gamers are referred to as, I believe it was a sticky customers or sticky.
Okay. Yeah.
Meaning once they're in, they're in. Okay. You don't have to do a whole lot to retain them.
I see.
This is financial analysts analyzing the market. Okay, so from an outside looking in, they're like, oh yeah, these guys are stuck in. They're in for a penny, they're in for a pound, kind of a thing.
They're invested,
They're invested, okay, and yeah, that's kind of shitty, but maybe it's a really good way of maybe that. When I heard that, I kind of went, wow, that makes that hurts to hear that.
Yeah, that's right.
But you know what? It's right. There's some real merit to that.
I don't know if it is right. So they are right in the sense of like you are invested into it and so you stick with it. But at the same token, it's just to write you off in some sense. Like we don't really need to listen to you anymore. I think that's a very short term perspective. It seems to be obvious, right? That they need to. Yeah. You mentioned how certain developers and stuff are putting putting their games available online for people to read and such. And one of the top performers in that department for me is a game called Europa Universalis, Price of Power. It's based upon a video game, Europa Universalis, right? And I think there used to be another Europa Universalis game themed in the same kind of way. It's themed in 1444. I know there's a World War II game that you referred to as well by the same name, so I'm not sure exactly. But this one, like every step of the development have been huge social media, Facebook, Twitter, humorous, humble, attentive to people's needs. On a Kickstarter, just listening to what people want and just absolutely amazing. Releasing their stuff on Tabletop Simulator. Say, this is what we got, guys. Read through the rules. Give it your best shot and tell us what's wrong, right? And just completely like the whole game released on Tabletop Simulator for free. And they're just coming up with this fantastic game. And it's just this amazingly intricate yet simple enough game that is just absolute this perfect system that they have set up. Like I'm a huge admirer of it. I immediately, like when I saw that attitude, was like, this is already so early on in the development, and I bought into that game and I'm super looking forward to it. It's just all around just a fantastically well put together game, and I think that's because they didn't just play test with 5 people. They play tested with hundreds of people. And that's just makes it for a fantastic game. And just the whole spirit throughout the whole thing, just humorous, funny, charismatic, and just altogether interesting, right? Yeah, it was really cool to see.
And and again, going back to Games Workshop, they've deleted their Facebook account before.
Have
just
they?
Because
Okay.
the negative feedback,
Oh, yeah?
they have literally shut down
Oh, no way.
various abilities and ways to give feedback to the company. They've shut
Right,
them
right,
down
right.
because
Wow.
there's so much, and they literally do. They want to shut down everything negative, and they want to highlight everything positive. Because they don't want to even pretend that it exists. And this goes more into their core business practices that, as opposed to game design. It covers both areas, but the company is very much in the mindset of that we cannot allow any negative
Right,
aspect.
yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Shut it
Yeah.
down. Shut it down. If we can shut it down, just shut it down. Who cares what it's saying? It's perceived as negative. Shut it down. Pretend it doesn't exist. Delete the account. Get rid of it. Block them from our forums. Whatever, and highlight people who are positive about our product. It's one thing for a business to kind of promote themselves and downplay negative aspects of the business. This is
borderline fascism or
it's
something.
borderline fascism.
Or
now I'm a free economy kind of guy, so if they want to do this, it's fine. But I'm also going to call them out on it
sure,
every chance I get.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, to kind of get concisely try to concisely explain my point. If a player says you're playing it wrong, I will point to the rule book and I will say, no, I'm not. So long as the rules are clear. Now, there are times that you will read a rule and it can be interpreted either way. Okay. And I made another video about my 2 biggest complaints about reading rule books and game design, where one of them is clear and concise. Well, is one more important? Yes, being clear is more important than being concise.
Right. Okay.
And I also don't want you to. Well, I wrote that it works this way here. It's okay, but that's okay. So I think it works this way. Oh no, you didn't read paragraph 2 in chapter 5. Okay, but this is chapter 2. Yeah, but you have to go read chapter 5 for this to make sense. It's like,
right. Yeah.
That's not acceptable. That is, and as a consumer,
sure,
I will not accept that.
Yeah.
That if your argument right off, I won't accept that argument. I may accept your product in the end, even though it's got a shitty rule book. Oh, and by the way, going back to the Dice Tower example,
I don't think we touched on that.
Have I touched on that here? I know.
No, that was in the preamble. Yeah.
Okay, most people who watch this probably are familiar with Tom Vasel, okay, and the Dice Tower. And he is probably the biggest board game reviewer probably in the world at this point. I mean, that's his entire job now, is reviewing board games. And he's got multiple employees that work for him. And it is a big channel at this point.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I have a lot of respect for him for his success. I don't always agree with every point he makes, but that's fair.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I respect how he is willing to say, look, even if my channel takes money from you for advertising, which they will do at times, or you buy the ability to post a play test of your video, they have a new series just for that. He goes, at the end of the day, if I play your game and it sucks, I'm going to tell you it sucks. You're not going to buy me. You're not going to buy me.
Yeah.
And he will tell you if a game sucks.
Sure.
And one of his biggest complaints that comes up frequently are badly written rule books that don't make sense. There's no reference charts. There's no index. He goes, these rules are just and then on top of that, the rules may be great, but the rule book is badly written. He will complain about that. He goes, the rules aren't difficult to understand, but the rule book makes it more difficult to understand because it could have been written better, simpler, more concise, or it needed more clarity.
Right.
And if you can add another page to the rule book to fit in those extra couple paragraphs here and there to clarify, then that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
Okay. He will also be the first one to tell you, look, this game isn't for me. It may be for you, but here's how it plays. Okay. And if he thinks that and I have heard him say this before in various reviews, where he will go, we read the rule. It didn't make a whole lot of sense. We talked about it. We read the rest of the rule book. It still didn't make a whole lot of sense. We went online. We tried to find some support for it to kind of clarify how it's supposed to work. It still didn't make sense.
Okay.
And ultimately, it ruined the game. It ruined the game. And
Right,
I'm going to rate this game as don't waste your time because of that. Because there's nothing out there. This game's been out for 6 months now, and there's still nothing out there clarifying what is clearly a problem. Because I read rule books for a living, and I can't figure it out. And my group of people that I game with, half of which work on this channel and do reviews as well, cannot figure this out. That's on you.
That's right. Yeah.
That's on you. Okay?
Yeah. Like it may be a good game, but you're not communicating how that works to us, and so therefore it's you can't be a good judge of if it's a good game or not because you don't have the information at hand. Yeah, totally.
And that's another point that I made to you before about when I was at the academy in my communications course, one of the things that they taught us was roughly 70% of all communication problems originate with the sender. Okay,
right.
Meaning I'm the person who's sending the information, but I did not give it in a right way that you could understand.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Now, even if you debate that whether that 70% number is arbitrary or not, and I don't feel it is, we'll give it a 15-point swing. Could be wrong either way.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. What does that come down to? That still comes down to a between 75 or 65% to 85%.
55 to 80.
All communication. All communication originating from the sender is problematic.
Yeah.
That's still the vast majority.
Sure. Yeah.
That's still the vast majority.
It is.
And I've realized this in my real life. Okay. At first, when I heard that stat in the academy, it didn't really. I'm kind of like, really, that sounds like it's too low because I'm great at communication. Well, then you get a little more mature and you realize, no, they're right. They're right.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense in my head, but I don't articulate it correctly to the person I'm talking to. Okay. That problem. So 70% of all communication errors originate with the sender.
Well,
is a very accurate term. Maybe even lowballing it a little bit. Okay. So it's the same thing here. You're the one writing the rules. It's the impetus is on you to make sure that you are communicating correctly. And if you realize that you're not, then you need to go back and you need to rewrite it in a way that does make more sense, or get somebody to help you write it in a way that makes more sense.
Right. Yeah.
That's fine. You think I don't give papers? I turned in my resume for a position at work the other day. I had my girlfriend proofread it just to make sure it made sense. I read it once, made perfect sense to me. I gave it to her. She says, yeah, this sentence doesn't make sense. This sentence doesn't make sense, and you probably want to clarify this. I would have never caught that on my own.
Yeah.
That's good. That's good. And if you are the kind of person that immediately gets defensive when somebody points that out to you, that is on you.
Yeah.
And you are setting yourself up for a lot of problems. Games Workshop.
I agree. Okay,
Games Workshop. You are setting yourselves up for a fail. Okay. Because you are not listening to people and you think that you are beyond reproach. You are infallible. And that's not true. Okay. So again, bringing all my real world experience into writing rules and getting back to the kind of core issue, I should never, ever, ever be put into a position where I am expected to interpret your rules.
Well, yeah, that is the goal for sure. Yeah.
Okay. If you write a rule set and you put it out there and you expect people to have to interpret it, you have already failed.
Yeah.
I will not back down from that state from that position.
I agree. Yeah.
Even an inch.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I agree with you because
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Continue.
If you put out a rule system and people read it and they start saying, "Hey, some of this doesn't make sense," and you tell yourself, "You know what? That's fair. I need to clarify that. I need to fix that up. I need to tweak that. I need to rethink how I work this." And then you come back and you say, "Here we go. Here's 2.0."
Yeah.
Okay. You're still probably going to have people who are going to go, "Okay, this doesn't make sense." And some people just sometimes misread stuff. That's okay. You have to deal with that.
Yeah.
It's like, really, I thought that was obvious, and everybody else thought it was obvious. Oh well, not a problem. We're just going to make sure we put that in the FAQ as just a clarification, and maybe we'll add a sentence in the next edition.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah. But if you put it out there saying, "Well, they'll fill in the gaps,"
no,
piss off.
Yeah, no, I agree. Especially if they're supposed to fill in the gaps by if they're supposed to fill in the gaps by reading chapter 2 and then chapter 8 and then coming back and there's a single sentence in chapter 3 somewhere there and piecing it all together, then you have this complete picture, and you're obviously a little bit stupid if you you didn't catch that, right? Then that's when there's a problem.
Yeah, and the person who does that and says that that's okay for me to take his concept and break it up through a 40-page rule book,
Yeah.
and just tell you you're stupid for not getting it. Actually, you are being willfully ignorant at that point. Okay, and I'm sorry if this offends somebody. I'm not going to back down. Okay.
No, I agree.
You are telling me I'm stupid because I do not have encyclopedic knowledge of the rules that you wrote after going through your rule book. No, that's unacceptable. That is an ad hominem attack on me. Okay,
Yeah.
I am coming out and I'm saying there is a problem. You're stupid. No, you don't understand.
That's
this
dumb.
is very confusing the way that it is worded. I know I'm not. No. Not only are you stupid, everybody else that agrees with you is stupid.
Yeah, for sure.
No,
Yeah.
I expect a more clear product from you. You're stupid. What kind of response is that? First off, somebody who wants your business, Games Workshop.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of response is that to give to your customer? You're stupid. Okay. And they don't even have to literally say you're stupid without saying, and they can still say you're stupid. Okay. Trust me, there are 1,000 different ways to call somebody stupid.
Yeah.
And but it still comes back to it. Now what's going to happen is you've alienated me. You've insulted me. You said I don't understand your rules, even though they are confusing. Okay, and you have taken the stance, and again in the case of Games Workshop, you've openly taken the stance of, well, figure it out. Figure it out amongst yourselves. Well, then I can't play your game.
Yeah,
I can't play it. I can't go to another city and play 40K with a different group of people because they may have a completely different set of ideas of how the rules works. Okay. Now, Games Workshop has made some strides in this. In their recent editions, where they have said, okay, every 3 months, they're doing rules addendums, and they're just putting online, a replacement card to go that you can cut out and glue over the entry for that unit in the codex or whatever, however you want to do it. You can just kind of but it's like. And they are saying we're listening to feedback from players and we are tweaking the point values of a lot of units. So, okay, this point, we put this point value too high for this unit. Nobody's playing it. Nobody would even justify playing it. So we need to bring it down 10 points. And then we need to kind of see how, and so they're actually tweaking the meta rather than just putting it out there and saying, buy our product and play the game. And if you can't figure it out, we don't want to hear about it because you're stupid and that's on you.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
that is a huge step in the right direction.
Yeah.
But I think this is the game designers pushing this rather than the company itself pushing this, because the company itself how does that affect, how does that make us money?
Yeah.
How does that make us money? Does that make us money? If it doesn't make us money, I don't want to do it.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm not far off the mark there.
Well, it could be, but at the same, the corporate could be seeing it as well, there is a benefit of having a social reaction, a positive social experience here, and our players enjoy us. So they might see that there is a bit of a money trail there for them too, right? There's always that.
They might. You're right.
So one theory I have is perhaps the way things originated with this is maybe people who tend to be gamers, they're a certain personality type. Now, this is super generalizing, right? But they might be a little bit more predominant in certain things than other things. That maybe they're a bit more competitive, right, in their spirit. And I think that's fair. It's a board game after all. A bit more competitive. Does that make them a little bit more disagreeable? I mean, maybe, right? Competitive and disagreeable. Disagreeable is not always necessarily a bad thing. You find I'm a bit more of a disagreeable personality, and that makes me more open to share my opinion and freely share it. And I think you are, in some sense, you're disagreeable, but not in the negative context, right? Don't get me wrong here. So
I'm a complete jerk.
There you go. But in regards to board games, maybe what draws board gamers into it is kind of a more competitive spirit, and so you have this kind of weird reaction where the players, when they mention stuff to the developers, they say things in kind of a competitive and somewhat maybe a little bit disagreeable way, and then the designers, they're just full of it at this point. Not full of pride or anything, but they're full of all the criticism and such, and they've gotten kind of cynical and bitter about all the stuff that people come up with. It's like, here I am in my basement, so don't take this the wrong way, but you have a guy hunched over his basement painting a miniature or whatever, right? It doesn't breed the most sociably interactive person in the world, right? And so when you have these people messaging the developers and such with a certain kind of chip on their shoulder or whatever about a certain unit, then that could have a negative feedback loop. And once the company gets big enough, then it can be very negative, right? So
and let me step back a little bit here and say there is a difference between a problem in the rules and a desire for a game to work a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And there is a distinction there. Now, I know there are gamers out there who, and this is not necessarily picking on Games Workshop. This is just an observation. Their rules designers tend to like chaos, not chaos as in the chaos faction, chaos within a game.
Right.
They like a lot of randomality, a lot of randomality. Okay. A lot of gamers I know don't like randomality. They want randomality when it makes sense, like combat. Combat is a very, very unsure thing. So randomness makes sense in that within combat. A lot of players accept that combat is a chaotic thing and is never a sure outcome. Now, there are Euro games that deal with that, and there are some very good examples of dealing with combat in a way that can be predictable with just enough randomness to make it fun and exciting.
Sure, yeah.
Like Kemet. Kemet is a good example of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you played that game.
No, I've always wanted it, though. Yeah.
Kemet's combat is fun. It's very simple and straightforward, but there are elements to it that my entire house is coming alive right now.
Dogs barking,
there
kids
are
running.
elements to it that create instances that it's just random enough, but it's also it's strategic enough because it's like, okay, well, I don't know what he's going to play. So I'm going to play my power card to make sure my really powerful card to make sure I win this turn. But I want to play a more middle ranged card, run the risk of losing, but then I still have my powerful card for later. That's a great example of a compromise between the two. And you hear this with D&D a lot when people run into their favorite game designers, and game designers love wearing this T-shirt that says, "Please do not tell me about your character." Okay. And as somebody who has ran games before, I completely understand where this is coming from. Now, if you want to walk up to me and you want to go, let's say I design a science fiction guy, dudes on a map game, and you come up to me, hey, I think this faction is a little overpowered. Okay, tell me why. Great. Noted. That's fine. That's a reasonable thing to do. But if you come to me and say, hey, this faction is overpowered, okay, why? Well, I think it's overpowered for this. Okay, we're still good. But I also would really love to see this faction get this ability. And what if you introduce a faction that has this ability? And then what about another faction that can do this? What about these unit types? It's like, okay, stop. Stop. Please come to me with a problem in the game so I can fix it. Those suggestions are better for a forum. And a lot of people get those two things intermixed. It's what do you want versus what is best for the game, okay? And what is a problem in the game. I've talked extensively with you about this. There's at least one Global War expansion, which if you want a certain element to the game, well, okay, actually we'll just use the diplomacy expansion as an example. If you love randomness and chaos and fuck being able to make an informed, risky decision, play the diplomacy expansion. That's for you. Okay, I do not think that is a good addition to the game. Okay, now there is a deviation there between, wants. I don't want that random chaos in my game. Some players do. Okay, so that expansion can feed those people. I personally never, ever, 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 ever want to play a game with that expansion in it because I think it truly ruins the base game.
Oh, we need to talk about it sometime.
Not an exaggeration. It truly ruins the base game. But if you're somebody who just loves randomness, then maybe this is a good thing for you. Although on the other hand, I also wonder, why are you playing a historical World War II game? You're better off playing 40K. that's not enough.
Yeah.
I'm not being insulting when I say that.
Right.
I really wonder whether this is the best game for you. There are other games in the market that are far more randomness and have that gambling aspect and that might
So
be better suited for what you're looking
yeah. So you're seeing that. I don't know if they still have it, but in the World War One game we had, it had that circle for diplomacy. I think that's what they still have for the diplomacy expansion. So you're seeing that as more of a roulette table, right? Where you roll a dice and try to.
You know what? Yeah. People, I see that as an interesting way of, and I know what you're talking about. I see it as an interesting way of possibly an innovative way
Right.
of doing diplomacy, but where other people see it as let's just roll a die and see where it lands. I don't want that. I don't want to incorporate roulette into my game, especially a World War II game, unless there's a reason, a real argument where that makes sense, like combat.
Yeah. Well, we need to discuss that one sometime. I think it'd be interesting because I really want to like that one. So let's discuss it sometime.
I want to redesign that one from the ground up.
That's the way I feel.
And I've already explained to you what I would do differently.
Yeah, I mean, we could make a recording of it next week and talk about it. Okay, excellent. So I think we've covered some good stuff here. So what do you think? Do you have anything more you'd like to add?
Oh, I got lots.
Well, I could tell.
But I'm gonna show some restraint. I do want to sum up by saying, I just want to kind of like say, again, if you put out rules that are deliberately vague and you expect the players to figure it out, don't be surprised if people backlash. Okay, don't be surprised if people drop the game and walk on. Okay,
yeah.
Because quite frankly, I think the vast majority of gamers fall more into my camp of randomness is fine, but if the game is nothing but randomness and chaos and you interpret it this way and I interpret it this way, which is another level of chaos, then don't be surprised if people just say, I don't like this game and I don't want to play. And that becomes the general mentality. Because like I said, Vassal, who does this for a living, that's one of his biggest complaints about games is this game is just pure chaos. I could not do anything that I felt was a meaningful decision because roll a die, okay, everything I did was undone. All right, keep on. I don't want to play this anymore. My decision should have some meaning in the game. So, and in addition, it's not my responsibility to interpret your rules.
Right. Yeah.
It should never be the gamer's. There should be no such thing as interpreting your rules, ever.
Yeah.
Ever.
Well, I agree with that. Yeah.
It plays this way. It plays this way.
Yeah.
If you come up with a good alternate system that you want to incorporate, put it in the
house rule or whatever.
Yeah. Here's a quick play. Here's the more advanced play. Here's the quick play for combat. Here's the more advanced play. We like this, but we realized, let's put that off to the side. So that, to make the game a little more streamlined. And that's fine. You kind of serve the best of both worlds. But the core rules there should be no interpretation. They work X. They work X.
That's right. Yeah.
And I'm really getting tired of people who are defending companies who put out crap product after crap product.
And then
throw the players under the bus for not figuring it out on their own. So, that's unacceptable. That is unacceptable. As a consumer, I'm not going to put up with that. So
no, I agree. I have 2 points I'd like to make too. I know I was closing this down, but 2 things, and they're a little bit scattered from our previous conversation. So earlier on, you spoke about having a new player in the game and how you should just pull out all the stops and do just what you'd normally do regardless. Now, I think there's some discussion to be had about what's appropriate with a new player. Perhaps you should take one of your teammates or the ally of the person that's starting out. I don't know how Warhammer works, so all my references are in something else. So maybe they need a mentor to kind of take them under their wing and really help them out as much as possible and really coach them through it. So it's not up to the opponent to coach them. But there's a place and a time where you don't want to just hammer them and completely demolish their sense of game because they don't understand a fairly complex game. You don't want to just destroy them in their first game that they show up and then they never come back either. You mentioned that that's something that maybe people should do, but I don't know.
Well, okay, there is a difference between destroying them in their first real game versus giving somebody a teaching game. Or
right, yeah.
Game.
That's what I was going to get to.
I go back to when I played against Tim at the local game store. He was playing Germany, and I've argued I think it's better to put new players into the Axis because they are technically more difficult. So it gives them a chance to learn those.
I suppose,
right from the get-go.
Yeah. They're also
But
the
it-
aggressors, so they could set the pace and
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And and he really flubbed the German double impulse because he didn't build the right units for it. And I explained it in concept, but I did not necessarily explain it in detail. And once we got there, and he went in, and then I kind of walked him. Okay, now here's your first attack, then this, and we kind of rolled that out. And oh man, I would have built. Now I get it. I get it. I would have built differently. And I go, yes. And here's what we're gonna do. Tim, take all those units off the board that are involved in this attack, sit them over here, and then replace them with the equivalent number of units. How you now know you would have bought them. Now that you understand, now that you have a better concept of how the double impulse works, and that's what we did. And to me, that was a learning game for him. So I had no problems doing that.
Yeah.
But I knew going into it that was a very real possibility.
Yeah, that's right.
Now after that, I would still, if I saw he left something wide open, I would absolutely go, "Hey Tim, you left this area you left Rome completely undefended,
sure.
and I've got my British fleet right over here with more than enough guys to take it. Do you want to back up a little bit and redo that?" And I would give him the option. Now this didn't exactly come up, but I have done this with
sure. Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, hey, I want to point something out. And even Dave will tell you, who was a newer player when we started playing with Tabletop Simulator, "Hey Dave, you know you left that area a little vulnerable, and I'll tell you right now, there's a good chance I can take it." And that's gonna. He goes,
yeah.
He thinks about it and he goes, "You know what? I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I think it's worth the risk."
Okay. Yeah.
Dave's not a dumb guy. He's not a new gamer.
Yeah.
So absolutely, but at least I took the time to walk him through it. Now, 10 games later, I'm not going to be that nice.
That's right. Yeah.
He's going to have to have learned his lesson.
You judge on the competency of the person you're playing against, right? So, there's been, the first game I played with Hilltop on Operation Winter Solace, right? So he came at it new. He'd never played in a game before, and he was telling us, I'm new at this. I don't have much experience. And so I know for me, my side of things, I was like, well, he is new, so he made a mistake, or he might have made a mistake here, and I'll just kind of give him, before he played, I'll give him all the strategies I could think of to really help him out as much as possible. And I'll even advise him in certain moves I made and what he can do. And he's a very experienced guy. He knows his stuff, right? He's played a lot of other games too, so maybe I overshared some of the things that he could do, and it came back and bit me in the ass later on, right? So you have to judge on the competency of the player.
But now I got a great opponent to play against.
That's right. Exactly. Yeah,
and you've taken time to nurture him.
Yeah, okay? That's right. Yeah.
And there is a difference with this game, because the top end of Global War, for example, is very different than the top end of 40K, where there's a very strong rock, paper, scissors mentality with the army. Well, this army trumps this army, but then this army trumps this army, but then this army can trump this army, but then this army can trump this army. Yeah. And to Games Workshop, that's balance.
Yeah. Well, that's dumb.
This game, that would never fly. That cannot fly. Conceptually, you couldn't apply that here. It's not even feasible to do that here. So I don't want to hide this aspect of this rock, paper, scissors mentality at the high end of 40K from a new player. I want to say, you're going to run into this.
Yeah.
If you're okay with that, have fun with it. Okay.
And maybe that's when YouTube channels like this or whatever can really expose this kind of stuff and say, this is what you should be aware of before you get into the game. And maybe the publishers could also, point people in that direction, say these are kind of good people to listen to when it comes to this stuff, to kind of get yourself informed at the meta kind of perspective of how things look when it comes into the game. Like, we've done our best. We have some flaws that we need to work on in the meta. Another point I wanted to make too is in my how long was it? Year I worked for Historical Board Gaming for Global War 36. So it is a year, but the actual work I did, I sent them a lot of stuff, but a lot of it wasn't received well, let's say, because a lot of it wasn't written well. Just going to your point about having things well written, well articulated. They always told me, like, bullet points. You need bullet points. You need to just simple. I'd send them pages worth of documents. And I have, like, on my computer, I still have a whole bunch of stuff, but it's all like just a word mash of stuff, of different ideas and concepts, and say it's just bullet points. So a lot of it didn't, I don't know if they even read. I bet you they didn't even read a lot of what I said, because they are swamped with everything from all the players that are out there that are sending them suggestions and stuff like that. So I suppose what I'm saying here is, if you have suggestions for Global War 36 or for Warhammer 40K, and understanding that they've gotten a little bit cynical, I'm not pointing the finger at anybody. This is just my supposition that if you deal with people who are constantly negative and constantly opinionated, eventually you might become a little bit cynical. So take pity on certain people and be nice to each other and
I'm
try to
never
write
saying-
things up.
I mean,
I'm not saying you specifically, but if
I
you,
am taking a hard line stance. I
Yeah,
am taking a
yeah.
hard line stance on what I expect as a consumer. So I have no problems with that. But that doesn't mean that the person who maybe put, and again, this doesn't mean that the person who put out a product that I think is a bit off is at all a stupid person or a lazy person. or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I just think that they, in general, the expectation, well, you didn't meet the expectation, so you're not getting my money, or whatever the case is, just to use an example. Get to that point, and then we'll start spending money on your product and supporting your product and putting your product out there.
Yeah, but it's that
don't
same kind of
attack
like,
me.
yeah. Don't attack you, but you don't not. I'm not saying you, but people don't attack them, and then they don't attack the other people, and the accusation that their rules aren't well written. Well, make sure that your response to their stuff is well written as well too, and it's like this symbiotic relationship that everybody needs to have. And I think, as an example from this Price of Power Europa Universalis, is like come at things with a sense of humor a little bit. A sense of like. A humbleness, a sense of humor in some sense, and be like, look, yeah, we made a mistake, or we need to work with stuff, and thank you for your feedback, and try to maintain that, on both sides of things. Like the people writing things have mercy, and the people, the developers also have mercy. I think that's all I'm trying to say is we all want a good game at the end of the day, right? Both the developers and the players as well, and so everybody has to kind of work together to kind of create something good. So.
And I've called people out on YouTube before where they're just they're nasty. They're just nasty.
Yeah,
I agree with your point that there's a problem with this expansion or this rule set or this game or whatever, this movie or whatever. It's like, but stop. Don't be a jerk about it. Now I can be very harsh about my criticisms about movies and rules and expansions, but it's the execution. It's not the person. If you're attacking the person, that's an ad hominem attack. It's a logical fallacy and doesn't really fix the problem. You're just insulting somebody for the sake of insulting somebody.
That's right. Yeah.
So what do you hope to achieve other than demeaning somebody?
That's right. Yeah.
And I've already said you're not demeaning anybody on my YouTube channel, or you're gone.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I'm sure I've been banned on a few places too. I'm a fairly, like we said before, a bit disagreeable and such. So I know I'm pretty sure I've been banned on some places as well in my earlier.
I didn't know you that well then. I said I'm sorry. Okay, stop.
No, I don't think you're proud of it. Anyways, all good. So excellent.
All right, yeah, I think we can wrap this one up, and we'll figure out what we're going to do next week. And for now, it's Wintermute signing off.
Excellent. Okay, catch you later. Cheers.
Later. Oop. Fuck.